let me officially welcome you, Yon, to the Castro Valley Compass podcast. It's so
Thank
good to
you.
have you in here. And really, you and I have known each other for a while, but there's a lot that I don't know about what you're doing. We met at the library, I think, a week or two ago, and just some of that stuff that you were talking about. I'd love to sort of recap. What do you do, Yon?
What do I do? I like to say, I still like to say, even though about 30 plus years ago, started a game software company.
Okay.
And specifically in the development area of gaming, where in gaming, there's two real segments of the industry. There's publishing and there's development. And we were the developers. About 2000, 1999, 2000, we decided, I took a break from doing that. In 1998, I worked for a company called Berkeley Systems. The company, they were another game developer, but they built the You Don't Know Jack games. I don't know if you've ever heard of those, and Austin Powers games. And spent a year there, completely burnt out of the publishing side of the business, and went back to my business, my company. But we switched it up a little bit, because at that time, well, and up to that time, the development industry in gaming was very cyclical. And when I say cyclical, it's not year to year cyclical, it's months. You would put out something that was popular, or that was a game that was a revenue maker. It would last a few weeks if you were lucky, months if you were lucky. And then you dive. And so it was this business cycle of boom and bust that was super rapid and worked really well for a 20-year-old, but not for a 30-year-old or somebody having babies as we had begun to do. And I did a stint working with an insurer here in San Francisco as a programmer. And
programming?
Just programming their interactive solutions and kind of gamifying their processes, their kind of more lackluster industry. It's hard to get across the healthcare. It was a healthcare insurer. And so we were trying to get people to care about preventative health and to really get into that. While I was contracting with the insurer, and I thought, gosh, gaming has all of these elements. It has this take a message, make it interesting and viable, and then grasp a person and kind of hold on to them and give them challenges and things to do. And I was thinking that's very similar to what this corporation was attempting to do on a massive scale in health insurance. And so I came back to my company, and we married gaming with healthcare. And it was kind of a difficult marriage at first, because a lot of the developers that were in our company at the time, were out there to do something different and do something innovative, and insurance was not on their mind.
Didn't come to the top of the list.
Didn't come to the top of the list, but that was part of the problem. Is it wasn't just insurance; it was health. And in the early 2000s or late 1990s, health as well wasn't well known. I don't want to say as an industry, but just as us all taking care of each other. More recently, in my children's generation, we've seen a lot of attention being paid to mental health and work-life balance, and not returning to the offices, and having gone through the pandemic. We now are in a place where health is a huge part of our existence, of our importance. But back then it wasn't. And so what we did was we turned around and we looked at the business structure and the way that there was just this wonderful steady slope of business, where we were coming out of gaming that was like a roller coaster every 3 months.
Right.
And we thought, well, if we married these two business types together, we might be able to, have food for our kids. It was
big
just
goal.
there were small steps, and it has worked. And so over the past 25 years, we have become a gaming and healthcare business. And so now, at first, basically bringing software and gamification concepts into the healthcare industry, and using it to get people interested in mainly preventative healthcare services or healthcare thoughts and processes. And for us, that also works on a ideal idealistic standpoint, because this is where this preventative healthcare is where you need less insurance. In essence, you need less critical incident support. You need less chronic illness support in money and finance.
Right.
And so if we felt and continue to feel that if we build and use gamification to attract people to their own health, then we are not only making people healthier, but we're also doing really good business for our clients.
Right.
Because it goes hand in hand. So what started as kind of this Robin Hood approach of, we're going to go into the healthcare industry and repurpose their funding for gaming, has really, we thought we were going to transform them, and they kind of transformed us.
Wow.
And it's been a really interesting road. The last couple of years, we had this internal struggle where we weren't sure if we were a healthcare software company or if we were a gaming company. Or we launched a wonderful community called Binks TV, or Binks.tv, which works. We were talking about Twitch, which works on Twitch and supports developers and streamers on Twitch and gives them tools and writes software for them. And that community really grew up. But it also lent itself to this, what are we as a company? What are we as a business? And so about 5 years ago, we stepped back. The company was called Monkey Bite Development, because of course we're gamers and why have a normal name? And we split the company into two focuses. So we had Binks.tv company that was focused on game and game development, and people in game and teams that worked in and for that purpose. And then we split and started another group called Health Tech, just an internal group at that time. But let's see, I think it was the beginning of this year, in fact, that we officially launched Health Tech Incorporated, or Health Tech Services Incorporated, as a health technology company, utilizing game work and working with companies like Anthem and Optum and United Health Group and Cigna and others that are out there, basically bringing concepts of how to capture and involve people online using what we've learned and what we continue to work with in the gaming industry with Binks. So Binks became this wonderful community of that still just feeds our souls just brilliantly. But it's also, when you're in gaming, you're really on the bleeding edge of technology, right? You're in an area that's not there for the money, it's there for the passion, it's there for the game, it's there for the ideals. But you're testing out some incredibly high-level technologies. And the healthcare industry, not so much, right? Wonderful industry, but there's a gap there. In fact, that's what we call it. We call it minding the gap between where technology stands in gaming and where technology stands in health. And Health Tech, the new company, does basically minds that gap. It works with companies to figure out how to take technologies that are evolving and cutting edge out there and applying it to healthcare over a period of time and for the specific needs of a company. So, we don't want AI. We were talking a little bit about AI. It's been in gaming for a long time. NPCs, AI in general, world builders. These are machine learning. These are things that are well known within the game industry, and becoming well known in the society as a whole right now. Right. And in the next 5 to 10 years, will become applicable for the healthcare industry. It really isn't applicable right now, except as a tool. But when I say applicable, I mean applicable. I mean applicable for the user, the customer of the healthcare industry, and it's not quite there yet.
So when you say companies that would be able to utilize this, are you talking primarily about insurance companies or other companies that have large employee populations, or all of the above?
All of the above. In fact, we began working with large insurers and in the healthcare industry, and they over time introduced us, and we've split off and done business with their clientele, which are generally large and enterprise companies.
Not insurance related?
Insurance-related work or technologies. So, well, let me take that back. Health-related work or technologies. Okay. So the insurer has in the past introduced us to these companies and the client companies.
Mm-hmm.
And those introductions then become, oh, can you run a raffle with us? Can you set up a challenges technology? Can we talk about AI? Can we consult about something to jazz up our websites? But it's all still very focused around health.
Okay.
And so, lots of the companies we work with, they have very great IT and technical and marketing departments and services themselves. Where we fit in is we say, well, okay, yeah, but what about your employees? Do they care about their smoking habits? Do they care about getting out there and walking or standing up or every 15 minutes or whatever it might be? How can we jazz that? How can we work with your employee base and interest them in health? And how can we use technology to do that? And that's where we fit in. That's our niche. That transfers over to nonprofits, that transfers over to government groups. We've worked with a lot of government groups. It's expanded beyond the insurers, but the insurers are still a really big part of our business. Yeah,
sounds like a really important place to start for sure to get in the industry. When I think of gamification, especially when it comes to health, I think about statistics, tracking statistics like I was on the elliptical for 10 minutes, or I went for a walk with my dog, or I did a yoga class, and I'm tracking this on a Strava or a Garmin or something like that. Is that even remotely related to what you're talking about?
Or is that... So I would, gamification starts way before that, but it ends up with that.
Okay.
So we start with the client and they ask us generally what gamification is. And I say, well, it's color, it's language. It's the way that you structure your marketing presentation using the technology that you're working with. And I'll give you an example. If you're coming to a health service through a website on a desktop, it should be different and unique from coming to it on your phone and through a QR code, right? Or a browser on your phone as well. And so you want to be using these channels differently. Or we were just talking about doing this in podcasting or VODing or vodcasting or the different social media channels that are out there. You want to be having a different approach to Facebook live streaming than you do to Twitch live streaming, than you do to TikTok. And what a lot of companies tend to do is they'll create one form of media and then look to spread it amongst everything that's out there.
Right.
And that there are opportunities to do that and ways to do that where it feels very good and natural. Absolutely. But if you really want impact, you want to create something special for TikTok. You want to create something special for Twitch, something special for your phone, something special for your desktop. And we see this. You can use the measure of our clients. The larger insurers generally go towards the enterprise clients. Most of those clients are coming to the information and health information that we're shaping and giving to them through their desktops at work in a cubicle. And so that's different than somebody in a nonprofit that's coming generally today over their phone, and maybe they're out in the field. And you want to be speaking differently to those people. Color will do that. The way you speak to them will do that. The way you format the information will do that. And that's, in my mind, that's all gamification. Because gamification for us when I was doing our indie games and Berkeley systems, it was, you had 17 seconds was how much time you had to grasp a person and get them interested in your topic, in your game for that matter.
You're talking about a presentation or the game itself?
The game itself, 17 seconds.
Wow.
That has gone down to about 3 to 4 seconds now. But it also depends on what channel or that you're reaching them on. So your phone, it's actually much faster than on a desktop. And you can imagine if you're sitting in a cubicle and you're on your desktop and maybe you don't want to be working so much, you're on the internet and you're on the web and you're moving around, you actually have a little bit more time than the person who's walking down the street looking at their phone and trying not to run into other people.
Right.
And so the messaging has to be different. And that's part of gamification, is not just knowing how you're taking the information, you're formatting it, but also who is watching it and where they're coming from. So their perspective.
Wow, okay.
And so it goes all the, so gamification for us goes all the way from color and, you know, making your information exciting, just with the use of color and language, all the way through to what you're talking about tracking and data, and then the security issues that surround that.
Right.
We work off of 3 pillars in our industries. It's access, engagement, and utilization. There's a 4th pillar, which is reporting. And reporting is something that we're always kind of stepping in and working around, but in health, it's a very, it's one of the lesser pillars. And the reason is because it's also a very personal pillar. It's what we wrap GDPR and HIPAA requirements. And you and I feel, well, we don't want these insurers or hospitals. Strangely enough, we want them to know what we want them to know when we want them to know it, right. But never, ever any other time.
Right, of course, not too much.
Right,
yeah.
And so that's a real difficult thing. So in my business, we shy away from the reporting aspect. We shy away from that pillar. While it is important for us to know how people are engaging and how they're utilizing, it's less important than people simply engaging.
How does this, do you see this at some point affecting things like insurance premiums if people are tracking a specific, whoops.
Sorry, Siri woke up. I'll put her away.
She's trying to chime in.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think about something as simple as smoking. You know, it's like if we have people in a business and I'm covering their insurance, you know, I prefer they not smoke because that's going to raise the premiums and cost the business more money. So is there and this kind of crosses the line of the privacy factor, will there be in your mind some sort of stat or metric that the company is using in order to lower their premiums?
Yes, and there always is.
Okay.
But but it can't be the defining moment of what you're trying to do, right?
Okay.
And this is where it gets difficult in working with larger business. Well, it's both difficult and easier, because when you're working with larger businesses, an enterprise level, insurance level, or corporate level health, they're generally not looking at the individual. Okay. In fact, we in our reporting, we do what's we call headless or statistical reporting, and they're looking at groups of people. It's uninteresting to them to look at the individual, because it's not trend worthy.
Right.
And at this level of business, you're trying to do things that are trend worthy. You're trying to do things that move whole audiences and whole work groups or whole nonprofit communities, right? You're not interested, let me take it back. They, of course, are interested, we, of course, are interested in the individual, but not in the sense that we want to know from a technical standpoint where you live, what you do, where you go. It's that we want to know how the community lives, works, and goes.
Okay.
And so one of the things that is difficult is that when you have the accounting, you're trying to value a service, a health service, for instance. The easy thing to do is say, well, if we put $1,000 into this, we're going to save $10,000 because people will stop smoking, and therefore we won't have to do this. And the problem with that is that it requires data to prove that you've now reached $10,000.
Right.
What a lot of businesses had done in the past is that they would spend time on spending the money and then proving the data, not necessarily on the middle part, which is how do you actually get somebody to stop smoking?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and there's, that's important business. It's important for everybody to count those beans, for lack of a better term. Where we like to focus is in the middle, the actual getting it done.
Right.
And the nice thing is that we don't need to know personal information. Technically, we don't need to retain or access personal information to do that. What we're looking for is communal, is statistical, is can we move people with passion or with color or with technology to do certain things. For me, I have a problem with cigarette smoking, and I've been trying to quit for 30 years. An app or something that we develop that moves me in that direction, that helps me smoke one less a week or one less a month, does a good thing for me. And in my business in health tech, that does good things for us. That's where our passion is. And that's why for us, the tracking and the reporting is the lesser of the pillars. And frankly, it's been an afterthought. When we set up the business, it is access, engage, and utilize. And then many of our clients came in and said, well, but how are we going to value this? Right? How do we know you've done this? And we generally know we've done it because we can see, we can talk, we hear the chat and Twitch, and we hear the emails that come in, and we see the numbers. Now we see the numbers and we're like, okay, the community is moving. 1 billion steps have happened. We're making progress. And now reporting and tracking becomes a little bit more important, but it's only for the business case mainly.
Okay.
It's not for the individual and for the kind of cause. If you want to learn how, or you want to start running and you've downloaded our app and it helps you move 1 day a month more than you did,
right.
I don't need to tell you how many steps. I mean, it is wonderful to tell you how many steps you took and give you a badge and say congratulations and I love you. That is wonderful and it is helpful.
Right.
But
Yep.
And that's where we can kind of cross this into artificial intelligence as well, is that it's like the connecting of the use of it as a tool for our empowerment is where health can use it. Healthcare can use it.
Right.
Not as I'm going to have less clinicians or I'm going to take less phone calls because, Rivara AI is taking care of that.
Right.
That's not service. And the healthcare industry knows that. And they've been really circumspect and they've been really careful about how to implement it. And I actually give them great kudos for that. They're being very conservative about these technologies, but that conservatism also lets things slide through the cracks, for engagement and utilization. And that's where health tech comes in.
There's a term I learned, or I don't know if it's a theory or what it's called exactly. There's some, I think it's a person's name, but I found it very fascinating. The concept was when a metric becomes a goal, it no longer serves as a useful metric. And the easy sort of analogy for this one or example I could say is the graduation rates from high school. Our goal is we want every kid to graduate high school because that means that you're well equipped to go into the world and become successful.
Right.
So our goal is, or the metric that we use to measure that is how many kids have graduated from high school. And then when the numbers start going down and we see, wow, not as many kids as we'd like to are graduating, let's lower the standards of graduation so that we gain more graduates, but then that metric no longer serves because the requirements have been reduced so much that now they're not really ready to go out and be successful in the real world. They're graduating to the numbers we'd like, but how does that apply to
100%.
what you're talking about in health?
100%, absolutely. And so, I mean, it's funny you use the schools too, because our kids went to school together here, and I also saw that at the top end. So you're talking about how how industries can basically lower the bar to meet a metric. We also saw that. My kids went to Marshall School up here in Castro Valley, a high performing school, wonderful school, and the No Kid Left Behind program was pushing them to do a percentile, a metric, 10% better every year over year over year. And here was a school that sat at 94, 97 percentile of testing rates, I think it was. And the teachers were just like, well, now what do we do? And I couldn't believe it. I kid you not. We were sitting in a PTA meeting, and the district and the state came. I don't think it was a district. I think the state came down and said, you are now needing to target 107%. You need 107% of scores on all your tests. And us teachers and parents were just like, we took math. I mean, I was never good at math, interestingly enough. I love to program, but I was never good at math. But I know that's not possible. And so there's this bottom and top end focus on the metric or focus on the reporting and statistics where you really start losing sight of the value and of the engagement or what we call in gaming engagement. And that's where we really like to put our all of our capabilities is into that middle spot. But it's also interesting because, you know, we have a hypersensitivity in our society, in the global society, for privatization of data and for security and issues around that. And huge amounts of money, huge effort is being put into new and innovative ways to secure our data. Unfortunately, every single one of those implementations also means that that money doesn't exist for engagement, that doesn't, that every time you step into, every time you shut down one door so that it can't be open for anyone, for a hacker or for somebody who would misuse it, you also shut it down for somebody who would be creative with it. And maybe the next child that would use that tool or creative that would use that tool to do something phenomenal. And so while we play on both sides of that, we work really hard with the security and with information. We really focus on how can we continue to be a team that's focused on creativity and in using all of our hardware, software, humanware abilities for creativity and for the purpose of health and for the purpose of gaming and kind of marry those together. So now our structure, to loop way back to where we were talking about, our structure is that we're three different companies. We're Monkey Bite Development, which basically invests in Binks and also Binks as a company and Health Tech Incorporated as a company. And then a short time ago, my wife and I locally started a nonprofit here in town, and that's our third kind of business.
I'd love to talk about that a little bit. That's ForestR?
That's forestr.org. Forest, with the way it's spelled, there's no E after the T, and we joke that it's the Napster for trees, or the yeah. So it's
Napster for trees.
It's initially began around wanting to plant trees. That was the whole concept, looking at our space around us and noticing that historically it's very different. You and I live in an area of rolling hills and grass and oak trees. But this traditionally was a space filled densely with coastal redwoods, large sequoia redwoods, and I mean dense forest. Right. And the history around how what we see today and call natural today came to be is human and kind of a little sad. And so I wanted to go plant trees. I got done. I continue with software. I love software, but it's a very virtual thing. It's you put something out and you've got 3 to 6 months now for it to have value, maybe a few years. But I plant a tree in the ground and my grandchildren will see it if we can keep humans away from it. Right. You know, and that's a wonderful way for me to find work-life balance where I can work to something that has a virtual impact, that has engagement, but then I can also work on doing something that has generational impact and generational engagement. And that's been incredibly sustaining for me.
So do you actually go out there and plant the trees yourself?
100%.
And what kind of trees do you plant?
Well, we do a lot of natives in the area, but we've expanded from beyond just the planting of trees. We now do. We have 3 different programs. Getting access to the land to be able to plant trees. I went to friends, or basically called up Caltrans, and I said, "Look, you've got land. My wife won't let me plant trees on our house on our land." And so I need land. I need somewhere to plant trees. And I went to Caltrans and they said, well, you know, we'll let you work with the trees that are on the area here. But the vehicle we have to do that is that you need to clean up litter. Okay. And so they have this wonderful program called Adopt a Highway. Yes. Yeah, and I adopted the highway, the 2 miles in between our little town here on one side of the freeway. And that got me out onto some just amazing open spaces that are fenced off, that are non-public, but they're amazing. It's just, it's some beautiful lands around our little tiny town. And then I started cleaning litter, and then that got completely underneath my skin. So today what we do is we have 3 programs. If you notice, I like threes.
Yes.
We've got a cleaning program, a greening program, and a gleaning program. Gleaning is harvesting of fruits and vegetables.
Oh, okay.
And so I run the cleaning. My wife now runs the greening program. And we have some wonderful directors, Pat Schultz and Grzina, who run our gleaning harvesting program. And it's this wonderful circle of my teams and volunteers will come out and clean litter encrusted areas so that greening can happen.
Okay.
We will, if possible, green those areas, planting trees, fruits, and vegetables. And then Grzina and her team will come in, and Pat Schultz and her team will come in and harvest those spaces.
And where does that food go? That
food goes right back to food pantries. It goes to churches. It goes to a recent discussion we just had was actually going to local schools. Huh. And a lot of the people who, not a lot, but a portion of the people who volunteer for us and work with us on the land are D-House people locally as well. So we bring food directly to them.
That's great. How does someone get involved if they want to become a volunteer and help you with one of those 3 aspects of your organization?
Well, ForestR.org is the thing. And so go there. You can sign up for gig work. There's gig work. There's donations. There's time. And
that was
ForestR.org.
So
ForestR. Yeah, ForestR.org. Okay. And being a geek, the main thing that I try to do is apply technology in every single way we can. Less sign-up sheets and more QR codes. Less letters of reference and more emails. And so our website is really the focal point for getting things done and managing the growth that we do. And we're actually going to be launching a ForestR University there, where we'll be teaching courses on how to clean and glean. You'd be surprised at how many people don't know how to pick up litter, and and love to everybody who wants to. Right. It sounds more intense than it is. Yeah. And you do have to build up some relationships to make some things happen, to get access to different parts of lands. But once you do that, there is no better heartfelt way to approach your community than to be cleaning it. And then planting trees in it. Yeah. And then feeding your community, right? All 3 of these areas are really fundamental to all of the things that we do as neighbors and as humans and and for this earth. And so for me, it's just been an incredibly reparative thing where in digital and gaming and healthcare, as much as I love it and I think that it does drive community forward, it's also very ethereal and untangible. Right. And I kind of don't know. I hope, but this is very tangible. Yeah. And so yes, we plant trees all over the place, and a lot of it is native trees. But here in the time and day and age we're in right now, you don't want to necessarily split hairs about native, non-native. You want to plant. Right. Get out there and put green in the ground. A decade from now, a generation from now, when we have lots of trees, when we have lots of cover, when we have lots of shade, that root structures, when we have lots of mycelium growing in the ground, then our children can decide about, like, okay, how do you pull back on some of the non-natives? How do you bring this land back to a natural nature? Right. But where we stand right now, we've got grassy rolling hills and 0 trees. And zero. Okay, we've got 1 every acre, right? Where we used to have 50 or 100.
How often do you go out and do this sort of thing? Is the cleaning of the litter like once a month, or is there a schedule that you have for this?
So we do litter cleaning every week, every Saturday. So tomorrow morning I'll be out there, and today's Friday. Tomorrow morning I'll be out there from 9 to 11. Pick a spot. I broadcasted through about 400 emails that go out and our website, and I say, show up at this time, work for 2 hours. So we try to keep it very tight so that people can enjoy their weekends. Right. It also helps us with budgeting, but it's the other thing is that if enough people show up in a 2-hour period of time, you can really clean a space. It's incredible. We do parking lots, on ramps and off ramps to the freeway, and then along the freeway. But the before and after, even sometimes depending on how many people show up in an hour, it's day and night. It's day and night, and it not only impacts the people who are there. I ask people when they show up, I say, look at it right now before we go out, and then when you come back, we're going to look at it again. I want you to take your time. I want you to take a photo. I want you to think about what you're picking up. And it's transformational for all of us when we're out there, because we can make an incredible impact. But it's also transformational for the community, because these are spaces that people are coming to our community and leaving our community. So for instance, we have a redwood exit that's right outside the building here. We have Strobridge and we have Crow Canyon. Right. These are three of our naturals. We're at Strobridge tomorrow. When we clean up redwood over here, for the whole week, people are not seeing litter. Now, I don't know that people necessarily notice that. Right. But if they are paying attention to the litter and they see it gone, I know that puts a smile on their face.
Definitely.
On Strobridge and Crow Canyon, these are areas, these are two entryways to our community. And if somebody comes from out of town, wants to visit a business, a restaurant, do some shopping here, visit the music company, we as neighbors want them to come. The first thing they see is that exit, and if it's encrusted with litter, it's not a great start. And so I love to think that, you know, I'm doing good things for business here as well, because as we come and enter our community, it's clean. Right. And recently we've been having just phenomenal numbers of volunteers come out. We'll do anywhere from 15 to 25 every Saturday morning, and it's kind of blowing my mind. It's very cool.
It's got to be gratifying to think about how that, you know, it's the whole. I like to talk about recognizing the ripple, like how much we can affect the people around us, not just in our own homes, but in our communities, and really, I mean, can ripple beyond what we even have any concept. That feeling of gratitude here as we enter into November. I mean, we're trying to really focus on that around the school. Is there how grateful we've got such good stuff happening here. I mean, there's a lot of craziness in the world, but if we focus on the good things that we have in our life, it just makes things so much better. That sense of gratitude, you get it every time you come out to the 9 o'clock Saturday morning. You just get that reinvigorating feeling of, I'm making a difference.
I tell my wife it's the reparative justice for my soul, you know, because healthcare can get a little heavy sometimes. Yes, absolutely, and we get it regularly with honking and with people that are doing thumbs up. The honking is always a little bit tenuous because, you know, I also we do a safety course before every single. For newbies every single time, and one of the things we say is any honking or screeching your tires, run, right? Go in these directions, run, and it gets a little tenuous because the honking is sometimes very supportive.
Gotcha. I can see how that gets confusing.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's been, you know, we're generally working with really, really dedicated, wonderful volunteers. The space that has been really special for me is that we also have, so with Caltrans, they have a cleaning crew that works regularly and around the clock. And it's a small cleaning crew, and they cover from, I'm going to say this in podcast, but for shame, but it's from Livermore all the way up to North Oakland on 580, which is, for those who aren't familiar with the space, it's a really, really long space. Yeah. And it's a lot of exits, and it's a lot of freeway, and it's a lot of litter. And these guys are just working their butts off. And they've said to me in the past, you know, once we get done with doing our loop once, everything is crusted again. It's just hard on their souls to see it. Yeah. So when they come out or they hear that we have 15 or 25 locals, teens, D-house people, local people who are housed, coming together and boosting and just giving them that little bit of help in our little tiny area, it really, really jazzes them. And they've been super supportive. They provide for us cones and hats and pickers and bags.
Nice.
And more importantly, they pick up the litter. So what we do is we bag it up in 45-pound bags, and we leave it on the side of the road. And, you know, in the past, I've heard tale. It's not been in my time, but I've heard tale in the past that, this smaller group has a hard time coming back and picking up those bags within weeks. I can't say that with our team, with our Caltrans team. They're there. We do a cleaning on Saturday. They're picking it up on Monday and Tuesday mornings. And I mean, they're just absolutely fantastic. But I think that it's also part of that. It's taking some work off of their hands, but it's also just showing them that we give a I'm trying not to swear. We give a care, right? We give a care about them,
right,
and the work that they're doing. And I've had the lead here actually come take me aside and said, we were out cleaning and somebody stopped and told us how wonderful it was to see us on the weekend doing this and that. And I'm like, yeah, that was us. That was us. And he knows that, and I know that. But the community is driving that passion back towards jobs that are absolutely fundamental for our lives here.
Yeah.
That we don't pay a lot of love to.
Right.
And that's also very reparative for me and for the community, I think, as well, that comes out.
Yeah, and hopefully will sort of impact people to litter less. I mean,
it does happen.
It'd be nice if there was
happen.
Less litter to pick up.
It does happen. We found that two things help with litter. Well, three things. One is rain, because people will roll up their windows, and so litter won't accidentally fly out. But the other two things that we can control a little bit more is litter attracts litter. And so absolutely, if there is litter on the ground, more litter collects around it, or even illegal dumping happens around it.
Yeah.
And we can have a whole show on illegal dumping. That's something that's exciting and interesting. The other is green. When there's green in the ground, there's less litter on the floor. Huh. And that has been proven. That we've worked with Nate Miley's office and some of the groups in Oakland who have greened streets that have been litter filled with just simple bushes, and people litter less when they see the green. And so there's this weird thing where we degreened our areas, right? And then we didn't clean the litter, and then we wonder why there's litter in our areas. And it's like, well, we devalued by degreening. We devalued our areas.
Yep.
And the litter attracts litter.
It reminds me of the broken windows notion of, if you allow broken windows, then likely the next thing is going to be graffiti, and there's, accompanied by other signs that people don't care, litter, and just not taking care of their properties. And it's like this sort of snowballing effect of, I think that's fascinating, that just the fact that there's something green there would make people, even if it's subconsciously, say, litter does not belong there.
Yeah.
All right, well, take this to the garbage.
Yeah, and there's the we had one of the teens. I was asking them to kind of problem solve, be creative about how we would plant, and I'm kind of looping back to your question about, do we plant trees? How we would plant to fight litter. And he said, well, maybe not in America, but let me go and check on YouTube. Maybe in Germany or somewhere in Europe they figured it out. I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. And 2 weeks later he came back and he's like, I got an idea. And it was a freaking great idea of planting bushes in U shapes at intervals, for 50-yard intervals. Not just hedges of hedges for the sake of green, but in a certain shape that where the U actually faced away from the traffic and from the air flow of traffic. And I said, well, we can't plant right now, but let's go look. There are a couple of spots around our area where Caltrans has actually planted this kind of thing. Let's go look at them. And sure enough, we found that when there was these bushes, about 50-yard differences between them, this was natural, and it just kind of happened to be, there was less litter in between the bushes. And so we can look, right now we could go up on the freeway and look across the freeway to a Center Street exit over here. And I've done this with the kids, where there's no bushes on the side of the freeway, and you can see just this light smattering of litter all the way down the way. And then you look at another piece over, say, by Strawbridge over here, where there are kind of interspersed kind of random bushes. The bushes act like a comb, and they collect the litter. And there's no litter in between the bushes. And it's airflow. It's cars driving by, and they're pushing air. And if that air picks up the litter, it actually grabs in the bushes, and then us cleaners can come along and we clean the bushes instead of having to walk 500 yards, to clean this litter that's lightly smattered across all of the
like
freeway.
A natural filter of some kind.
It's a comb. It's a natural filter. Yeah. And when these bushes were in U shapes, what we found was that the litter would actually flow around and into the bush, and then people driving down the road didn't see the litter because it was surrounded by a bush.
So is the U pointing, the two points of the U pointing at the traffic?
Away from traffic.
It's away from traffic.
Away from traffic. And so wind would come down and literally push litter around and into kind of like a suction cup. It was really weird. And I mean this is the thing. This is where you can kind of utilize green and planting to fight some of the problems that we have. And to answer your really long answer, I apologize.
It's okay.
To answer your question, yes, every once in a while we trip, we fall, we plant a tree.
Oopsie.
Yeah, and there's a whole, I never thought it would be so difficult to plant a tree in urban areas.
Because of regulations or?
Regulations, the community, native versus non-natives.
Oh, okay.
Just amazing.
Yeah, you'd think that everybody would want more trees.
You would think. You would think. But everybody's got an opinion on trees as well.
Of course.
And there's a not in my backyard philosophy as well. And so it's
for trees. For trees.
Huh. And I say this and tongue in cheek somewhat, but it's a little maddening. We plant a lot of trees. Let me just say that. We don't officially plant a lot of trees, I will also say, because people don't want to know. But if an oak seedling gets put in the ground or gets in one of the areas we are caretaking for, we'll actually be out tomorrow. There's just a lot of oak seedlings that are just coming up. And so instead of planting them necessarily, we're caretaking for them. So we'll be bringing out mulch and we'll be creating water swales and we'll be cutting back, doing fire abatement basically to protect the trees. Because we just planted, because humans in essence are not only are we the barrier to planting new trees, but we're also the ones that just will always find a reason to take down a tree. And so I get it. There's a lot of, there's plumbing issues. It fell on my house or it might fall on my car. I get it. It totally makes sense. But the scale is completely towards that, as opposed to leveling the scale towards, okay, well, if we're going to do this development and cut down 15 trees on say, Norbridge Road, where are we planting 15 trees? Or maybe we can plant 30 trees to replace that.
Right.
There's lots of discussion around the need to cut down and little around the replacement value. And that's where we kind of come in and advocate with ForestR, is we're going to be the ones that are a little loud, a little obnoxious around what are we doing to plant these trees or to caretake for them. Over here at our local library, we planted a giant sequoia recently. And one of the feedback was, well, how long is this going to live? It's going to, 10 years, 20 years? I'm like, no, 3,400 years. And the main thing that will destroy it and has threatened it a couple of times already are human beings.
Yeah.
This is a sapling, and it can grow into this intense ant-like brilliant being, living communal being for 3,600 years.
That's incredible.
And the thing that makes it that's the most danger to it is us humans backing over it. It's on the side of a parking lot.
Right.
So backing our cars into it.
Huh. I saw a documentary, gosh, it must have been 25 years ago or so, but it was talking about redwood trees. And it said, wherever you see a redwood tree, look around the redwood tree for something called a cathedral ring.
Yep.
And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'm, being born in the Catholic realm as a young man and grew up in going to church, I thought, cathedral ring, that sounds so like, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I've heard pixie rings and fairy rings. And I know it's fantastic.
But then I started looking at them, like they're everywhere. Like everywhere I see a redwood, and the whole concept you're probably familiar with is when they cut the redwoods down, it grows this ring around it as it's trying to survive and continue its life. So it's like the root system is coming up as multiple trees around that original one. And if you go up into Joaquin Miller Park, or, I mean, anywhere up in the Oakland Hills, and you see these huge redwoods, look around the base of them and you'll see, you know, the trunk is there in the middle, and then there's all these trees, or you'll see all the trees that are now there very tall are in the shape of a ring. I thought, that's just fascinating.
Yeah, no, and many trees they'll throw oaks, they'll throw seeds, they'll throw other things, they'll throw leads in their roots. Redwoods, their babies, their generations grow up from their feet, or their trunks, the bottom where they meet the earth. And so it's not even the cutting down necessarily. Sometimes it's the tree has actually just passed away. The original tree has passed away, but its siblings, it's not siblings, its offspring have grown up. And so, you know, you'll have the larger ring, and then you get larger and larger rings as you go on out generationally. They can be lost to fire, they can be lost to insects, or humans. But yeah, they're incredibly resilient beings, and they have root structures that are fantastic. But where many other trees will have root structures that spread out wide, they have structures that spread down deep. And so that's why another reason you get the rings as well. And so yeah, this actual giant sequoia that we got, she's growing, she's doing well, she's been named, dedicated to a local student we lost here named Lana Luna. And we did little cuttings from her so that we could clone her should anything go wrong. She actually is she was part of NASA's Artemis moon flight. So as a seedling, she was flown around the moon by NASA.
Really?
And then brought back down about 2 years ago, and grown by the Forestry Service here, not here, Forestry Service in the United States, and then disseminated to all over the United States to see how they grow and if moon travel and if space travel changes their structure. And we were lucky enough to get one of the only ones here in California, here at the Castro Valley Library. And so we're caretaking for her. But another thing that kind of, you talk about the fairy circles or the cathedral circles, trees are very social beings. And I didn't quite get that until we got Luna. She came in a box, and I did an unboxing video and had a great time with her, put her in a pot outside until we could plant her. And she was growing very slowly, and just kind of, I was really nervous. We got a lot of people watching this, watching her, and I was really nervous about seeing her grow. I happened to have, my wife had 2 firs that were given to us, and they were in pots as well. And I just put them next to her, just so I could water actually easily. And within about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they had all grown inches.
Wow.
And they weren't even touching roots. They were in their own separate pots, but they were just near each other. I can't explain, if it were one of them that grew, I could say, oh, this is just, you know, it just caught a growth spurt and it did this thing. All 3 of them grew. And it was just a moment I looked at it and I'm like, these are social beings. These are connected beings. And then they do the connection through the root structures, and I mean, all kinds of good happens. And so when we put Luna into the ground at the library, we also put the 2 firs in the ground with her.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And each one of them got is getting their own name as well from the volunteers that did it. Yeah, we try to plant everywhere we can, as I think, and with what we can. But where we can't, we're at least caretaking for what's there as much as possible.
That's great. I think I saw something about there's a trivia question, what is the biggest organism on the planet? And it was something like the root system underneath an aspen grove, I think.
There's an aspen grove. I don't know exactly where it is, but it is the largest tree with many branches that we as humans see as a forest. But it's literally one singular tree.
That's so cool. It's interesting to think about, you know, all of the living creatures on this planet and how we interact with one another and sometimes don't interact with one another. And that the idea of connecting on an energetic level with a plant or a tree, it seems like well, that's weird. That can't happen. But I think there is something to be said for sitting quietly with something like a tree or a plant. I remember when I was in college, I had long hair, went to San Francisco State, and I was an RA at the dorm, so I was somewhat known by people. It was my first taste of what could be called fame, and I hated it. It was like, I don't want people to know who I am, and I'm an anonymous guy. Anyway, I'm walking with my girlfriend, and somebody shouts from the dorms, "Tree hugger!" And I had to process it for a moment. I thought, I think they're trying to insult me, but thank you. I was just like, because I was at the time studying a lot of Chinese medicine, and we were literally like that. Previous week, we were out hugging trees and like feeling like doing this qigong exercise where you root like a tree. It's called iron shirt, but basically you're feeling as though you are connected with the root system under the ground. And so I remember thinking, tree hugger. Okay, I'll own that one.
It doesn't seem like a bad thing. I've never understood that one, but it's really a wonderful thing to hug a tree. I don't know how to say it any other way.
Yeah.
I mean, I love redwoods especially. Redwoods are my passion. And so, every chance I get, I'll walk up and I'll touch its fur. Yeah. And literally, as you walk up to a redwood, it doesn't have necessarily bark that's a crust on it. It's literally got this kind of fur texture to it.
Right.
And it's a wonderful thing to touch, and it's a wonderful thing to see grow. And then looking back at the history of how San Francisco was built multiple times off of our coastal redwoods here.
Right.
It's absolutely painful to kind of see, but there's good things happening. There's a lot of good things happening. And community, as I said, community is really coming back and understanding it. And then we look at, you've got children the same age as mine. They don't take any guff when it comes to dealing with these issues. When it's, somebody calls them a tree hugger. Right. We had the choice to decide whether we were going to make that an insult or not.
Right.
They don't take it as an insult at all, and I love that.
No,
I love that the empathy levels and the connectivity that the youth have around this subject right now is phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal.
It's inspiring, to say the least. Well, thank you so much for coming in today, Yon. I mean, I've learned so much about what you're doing, and I'm fascinated by the whole gamification of the healthcare industry.
Well, thanks for letting me try and connect it together, because that's kind of my life purpose is what the heck am I doing out here?
That's great. Well, I mean, Castro Valley is full of people that are passionate about what they do.
Yeah, it is.
Innovative and creative, and I think you're a great example of that. I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your story with us, and I have a feeling that we'll be learning more as the future rolls along. I'm interested in coming out tomorrow. I've got to see if I can clear my schedule. Is there something I have to do can I show up, or do I need to sign up first?
So that's one of the ForestR innovations, is that there is no requirements, there's no form, there's no, we just want you to be there. So when you do come out, we do a really quick little scan and scan of your information and safety course, just to make sure that we're all safe. But we do it when you come out, we do it one time, and then you never have to do it again. And the whole concept is to remove barriers to doing this kind of green work. And just make it as easy as possible to, like you said, just show up.
Cool. So tomorrow it's at Strobridge, you said?
Tomorrow will be at Strobridge. It's right behind Burger Island, where there's a McDonald's there and a couple of other places. And it's a space we call Pebble Park. It's one of the kids, I let the kids know, and everybody know, we don't have a amount of litter that we have to pick up. Every person can do whatever they want to do. If they want to focus on a little tiny space and just pick up cigarette butts and just makes that the most clean space in the world, go for it. It's wonderful for my OCDs. I sit in one spot and think it's wonderful. And if you want to range and go see the land, go do it. Stop taking Instagram photos. At the end of the day, if they come back with 2 pieces of litter and an experience of the land, we've done good things, right? And that's 2 pieces of litter that's not going down the drain. So we had one child who came out, Katie, a wonderful young lady, who came out, and she just wanted to collect these pebbles of concrete that were on the land, and she created a little mound. And we're like, wow, that's interesting. And but ever since then, we've been calling it Pebble Park. So
Okay.
it's now our Pebble Park area at the end of Strobridge. But it's yeah, that connection, that experience of just being on the land, we'll probably have enough people to do a good amount of work, the litter work immediately. And then what we're going to do, seeing as how the rains are starting here, we're going to do what's called swale work. So we're going to be pulling back. We do, for Caltrans, we do two things. We do litter cleaning and we do fire abatement. So we'll cut back trees to 6 feet, the branches, so that fire can go by and not catch the tree on fire. And then we use those cuttings to create water swales, to keep water on the land as it rains. And the kids and I shouldn't say the kids, we all freaking love that. Yeah. And that's part of that caretaking for the land in itself.
So when someone wants to come out and help, should they be wearing gloves or boots or like sun protection, that type of stuff?
Sun protection, good sturdy boots, jeans are a good thing to do. We bring gloves, we bring water, we bring pickers, we bring bags, we bring hats, and we bring safety vests. Okay. And so we'll bring some tools, but we invite people to bring their own tools if they're more comfortable with them too. And you know, we just try to keep it as safe as possible when we're out there, because we are near the freeway, but generally not right on the freeway for the most of the part. Right. So yeah, just in comfortable clothes that you know you can do a little gardening with, essentially. Cool.
Wow. Yeah. Excellent. And it's every Saturday from 9 to 11. And if someone's interested in joining you, they would just go to ForestR.org and check out your schedule or your location.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then from there, we post about special events, park cleanups. We have 6 different parks, what we call pocket parks, all throughout Castro Valley and part of Cherryland and part of Hayward. And there are opportunities to go to those parks and bring all ages of families. So the Adopt a Highway is 16 and older. Okay. But the parks are wonderful because all ages, from babies to grandbabies, are all over the place can participate in planting and weeding and caring for the park spaces themselves. And yeah, you just show up. We just want everybody to come out and be green.
That sounds awesome. Wow. Well, I will definitely be seeing you out there, if not tomorrow, sometime very soon. I appreciate what you're doing here to make our community better and more beautiful. So
it's working. It's good.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Yon. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
We'll have you back again on the podcast sometime soon.
As you can see, I'm very long-winded. So anytime.
Perfect. Excellent.